Ah, Joy Division. It's kind of mind-blowing how they made this kind of rock music in the late 70s, which, mind you, consisted of music like this.
Cock and ball torture, from Wikipedia.
I love a good bass line, so when Disorder said, I was instantly hooked. No pun intended. Who knew poor epilepsy meds, a literal madman operating the soundboard, and cheating on your wife would generate such good music? Alright, jokes aside, the sounds and aesthetic of Joy Division are so intriguing to me. They're old enough to where you got boomers gushing over it, and it was just so ahead of its time that people today are still being influenced by them.
Ian Curtis is really cool. I'm inspired by him a lot. Just the way he thought was awesome. I wish I could fuck.
Oh, and you also have the weird Gen Z gremlins like me. I actually found them through listening to after reading that Ian Curtis and Joy Division were listed in the credits of their first EP. However, you can only really experience so much within their discography, since they have like 40 songs to their name within their 3-year run. And the less said about New Order, the better. Just kidding, they're pretty good. The one thing I always hear about Joy Division is that their live shows were absolutely bonkers. Maybe not in a G.G. Allin shit on the stage kind of way or anything that Dead from Mayhem would do, but the energy of the music was just insane compared to the official recordings. Unfortunately, the fact that Ian Curtis would occasionally have seizures on stage doesn't add anything good to his stage presence. Thankfully, people don't glorify this facet of Ian for the most part. So anyway, back to the music. The studio recording of the Joy Division song Transmission is spacey and atmospheric, and that's courtesy of producer Martin Hannett. The bass and the synth kind of take center stage here, with the guitar just kind of sitting in the background. It almost makes you forget that, oh shit, they were a punk band. Then you listen to the live version of this song, and then you remember, oh shit, they were a punk band. In the live version, the guitars, the drumming, and Ian's vocals are just a lot more fierce. I see that Joy Division has this perception of being a very depressing and atmospheric post-punk band, and reading some of the lyrics and listening to the studio recordings will easily give you this perception. But some people tend to ignore that their live shows were the complete opposite in terms of energy. But, you know, come May 1980, Ian Curtis is dead, and the remaining members of Joy Division formed the New Order. They started to move away from post-punk, start to shift more towards dance music. And other than a few live performances, most Joy Division songs were dropped from their live repertoire. It wouldn't be until the 2000s, after New Order broke up and then reunited, for them to be played more consistently. That was up until New Order broke up again in 2007, with bassist Peter Hook leaving the group. For anyone who still doesn't know anything about Joy Division or New Order, this is kind of a big deal. This is like when Lars Ulrich just decided to take out Jason Newsted from his first Metallica album. Peter Hook kinda mattered, you know? Peter Hook is mostly known for playing his bass like a lead guitar. In plenty of the Joy Division tracks and some of the New Order tracks, his bass is like front and center. Even on the dance tracks with synthesized bass, he's just playing the normal bass as a lead guitar. But after Peter Hook leaves in 2007, what happens to New Order? Do they break up again like they did in the 90s? Does New Order form under a new name in accordance with their old pact with Joy Division? Well, they didn't. To my knowledge, what happened between Peter Hook and New Order is a big he said, she said thing, and I don't think I'm fully qualified to cover the beef. The most important takeaway from this is that after Peter Hook left, he formed Peter Hook and the Light in 2010, while New Order reformed later that year with Tom Chapman taking over bass duties. Now, you'd probably expect that, according to the title of the video, I'd be comparing the material they put out to see who's better. But it seems that Peter Hook's band never recorded anything new. They're a cover band, so that makes sense. Since then, New Order has made one completely new album since 2015. No, what I'm really talking about today is their live shows. Obviously, neither of them have as much aura as Ian Curtis. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Bernard Sumner took over main vocal duties in New Order after the breakup of Joy Division. Mind you, this was Bernard in the 80s. It's not like Peter Hook was that much better at the time. Suffice it to say, unlike Joy Division, their live performances kinda pale in comparison to their studio recordings. But that's just back then. Surely they're better now, right? Right?
My promise could be your theme, give an end to your dreams.
Right. Well, at least they're faring better than, say, Axl Rose or Frank Valli. I've never seen either New Order or Peter Hook and the Light live because I don't go outside, so I don't think I can rate their shows with 100% accuracy. But hey, we have video footage that we can go off of. I'll try to actually break these two down and see which one I enjoy the most. Who's doing the live show the best, New Order or Peter Hook's band? So I put together this hypothetical set list so we can compare the two. I picked Age of Consent and The Perfect Kiss on the New Order side, and Transmission and Decades on the Joy Division half. There will also be a special round at the end dedicated to Love Will Tear Us Apart. All of these songs have been performed by both bands relatively frequently at different live shows. So let's see how they both handle a rock-centric New Order cut with Age of Consent. The most apparent thing to point out is the difference in vocal delivery. Bernard originally performed vocals on Age of Consent, so he's more naturally suited to perform the track. This is Bernard performing Age of Consent in 2021. At points he's a bit warbly and sometimes nasally in his delivery as seen in a different performance. But I can kinda chalk that up to him being an old ass man. Bernard was never that great of a singer, and his age is not really doing him any favors. Nonetheless, it sounds the closest to the original. In comparison, listen to Peter Hook's version. Hooky is really trying his hardest to hit those higher notes, but his old man pirate voice is more funny than it is compelling. If I had to give him anything, I commend him for putting in a bit more energy than Bernard. In other recordings, he sounds better, so the pirate voice might be just chalked up to set fatigue. In terms of band performance, I like that the Light maintains a similar energy to the original recording. This means it's faster and the bass actually has a good groove. The rhythm bass player in the Light, Jack Bates, does a pretty good job at replicating Hooky's playing. Peter Hook doesn't actually play the main bass riffs, and often he just sings and plays his lead bass lines. In New Order, probably due to their age, they play their songs a bit slower and a bit more straightforward. This also includes the bass lines performed by Tom Chapman. They don't have the same kind of sauce that Jack Bates has. Here, they seem more like normal bass lines compared to what Peter Hook would have done. The guitar playing and drumming are pretty comparable, so I won't comment much there. So I honestly just call it a tie here. Peter Hook and the Light channeled the energy of the original recording better, but they're really held back with Peter Hook trying to hit high notes with the Cookie Monster voice. New Order isn't as energetic and is overall the more boring band, but at least I can listen to Bernard without laughing my ass off. Now let's see how both bands cover Transmission. So once again, we're back to the topic of vocal delivery. Since this was originally a Joy Division track, I say it's apparent that neither Peter or Bernard can really match up to how Ian did the song. With New Order's cover, Bernard's softer tone can't really convey the same intensity that even the studio recording has, let alone any live version. He just kinda sounds bored for most of his performance here, and when he has to ramp up the intensity in the last verse, he sounds kinda flat. Alright, how does Peter Hook compare? His deeper voice actually helps him out here since his tone is at least a bit similar to Ian's, while the gruffness of Hooky's voice is not something Ian has. However, that helps him a bit since when he has to ramp up the intensity in the last verse, he sounds pretty good. Well, as someone as good as his age can sound. He isn't Ian, but at least he sounds like a decently aging punk vocalist. Since we're here on the topic of Ian Curtis, neither Hooky or Barney can really match Ian's stage presence. I can't really fault them for that because they're both playing instruments and they would throw their back out doing the Curtis Schmurtis. The other members of Joy Division and by extension New Order didn't really have any stage presence to begin with, to be fair. For the most part, they're just kinda existing. Now, back then it looked kinda cool and mysterious, but now it's kinda lost all of its aura. New Order is just kinda existing. But Hooky is a different story. Since his band has 2 bassists, he doesn't have to focus on playing and singing at the same time. However, this leaves Hooky's hands free. And in my opinion, that weird little finger scan across the audience he does all the time looks really goofy. I don't know, it just radiates boomer energy, and I cringe every time he does it. You know what also radiates boomer energy? Peter Hook's outfit. Now, I'm not gonna go policing how he dresses, he's old, and that's what he's comfortable with. But the graphic tees, sleeveless shirts, skinny jeans, and cargo shorts aren't really doing him any favors. New Order dressed like that when they reunited as well, so I can't really pin this all on him. New Order now, for the most part, is a bit more conservative in dress. I do like the less casual and cleaner look of early New Order and Joy Division, so I'm a bit biased. To wrap this up, the band's performances between the two are still pretty comparable. The bass line is mostly 2 notes, so it's hard to mess up. The drumming is also consistent between the two. Both versions follow the studio recording rather than the more raw live Ian Curtis recordings. But regardless, they still sound pretty good. Right here, I'll call this battle in favor of Peter Hook and the Light, just for the fact that he sounds a bit more like Ian, than Bernard. So we kind of establish how they perform with traditional guitar music. So how do they handle a more dance-centric track like The Perfect Kiss? I'll actually focus on Peter Hook's rendition first. Based on the footage I've seen, he lets his guitarist take over lead vocal duties, and thank God he does that, because he sounds a lot more like Barney than Hooky. I couldn't imagine Hook trying to hit those vocal lines, so thankfully he's relegated to backing vocals, bar from the one verse. Albeit he's not really going high in his range, so it sounds passable. The performance overall, for the most part, sounds like the original record, sans Bernard. Can't really say much about the individual performers. The drummer is just vibing, the keyboard man is doing his thing, and Hooky only plays his bass solos. In fact, it's almost like he's playing a backing track. Now let's move on to New Order. So the first thing to point to right off the bat is that the more recent performances are in a slightly different key. If you're a purist, then you'd probably be put off by that. My theory is that Barney can't quite hit those notes anymore, but I digress. This isn't a shot at the newer rendition of the song. In fact, after listening to it a few times, I think I might like this version a bit more than the original. Besides the key change, the whole sound of the song is different. It sounds a lot more punchy and fuller than the original record. Barney's vocal performance is quite good here, even though his age brings some weird little quirks into it. And wait, it actually looks like everyone's playing their instruments. Yeah, compared to Peter Hook's backing track, everyone sounds like they're doing their part. My only gripe is that the bass leads don't stand out as much in the track, even though it's one of the more interesting parts of the song. And since I have the opportunity to talk about it here, check out the stage visuals. It looks great in my opinion and really plays into the sound of the song. It's a lot better than Peter Hook's pretty minimal setup, but that's probably due to budget constraints. Anyway, I feel the winner here is New Order's version. They sound like they're actually putting in the effort compared to Hooky's band, and as a result they just sound better. Returning to Joy Division, how are the performances of Decades? I consider the song to be somewhat of a deep-ish cut for Joy Division. It's not raking in streams like stuff off of Unknown Pleasures, but at least it's a little under half of Isolation streams. Regardless, the song has appeared in New Order setlists since the 80s, which is actually kinda surprising. Actually, mini rant. I appreciate that both bands do songs from each catalog, but I respect Peter Hook more for including deep cuts in the setlist. Apparently, New Order hasn't performed many of the songs, if any, from Get Ready Live. Peter Hook probably performed it in full by the time I upload this. He also plays a lot of actual Joy Division deep cuts like Novelty and Incubation. He even did Safety to Wear, a song that, to my knowledge, has never been played live in full by Joy Division. Mini rant over. Anyway, do they do this song justice? In my opinion, they absolutely do. I could say a lot of the same things about New Order's Perfect Kiss performance in regard to this one. The key of the song is different from the record, and there are a lot more layers put into this cover. They add some additional strings, and for some shows they add a whole orchestra. The extra guitar parts are a nice touch as well. In terms of vocal performance, as I said before, Barney is no Ian. But he doesn't have to strain his vocals here, so he ends up sounding pretty good overall. While I like the sound of this new rendition, I feel that the Joy Division original is a lot more compelling. This one sounds a lot more reflective and mellow compared to the original raw uneasiness. Regardless, New Order's version sounds great. So what does Peter Hook and the Light do with Decades? biggest change here is that the song is performed more like a traditional rock song, with this rendition being a lot less synth-driven. The cool drum sounds of the original take a backseat to an actual drum kit, with the original hits occasionally being played. There are a lot more guitar parts here with an actual solo near the end. Hell, even Hooky gets on the melodica here. He doesn't play the actual melodica line in the song, and seems to just be freestyling it, but I appreciate him putting in the effort here. Of course, Peter Hook has the benefit of sounding like Ian, so that earns him extra points. Overall, Peter Hook and the Light still sounds pretty good over here. To be honest, I feel that this is also a tie. It's not the original song, and I'd love if they try to lean more into the original, but they don't really have to sound enjoyable. Finally, let's talk about their covers of Love Will Tear Us Apart. It's an iconic 80s song and Joy Division's most popular track. I hope New Order doesn't fuck it up. I mean, in the 80s, New Order did the song pretty well based on this recording. It sounds like the live Joy Division version, which is a plus. However, I'm pretty sure they'd perform the studio version and retain the energy the original recording had, right? Man. The song being put through the New Order filter ruins it in my opinion. I'm not knocking the performance, but the sound is completely off. It sounds like a generic pop track now, completely missing the mark of the original. I've seen people equate this to being a tribute to Ian and Joy Division, which leads it to sound more positive in this cover. I get that, but not really. This rendition pales in comparison to the original, much more than usual this time. This is like when Noel Gallagher did his boneless rendition. This shit is the equivalent to like Puddle of Mud covering Nirvana. Okay, maybe it's not that bad, but you get me, right? Okay, now Peter Hook, please don't fuck this up. Okay, thank you. Point to Hooky. Okay, after tallying all the points, Peter Hook and the Light beats New Order. However, let's disregard the last round. In my opinion, both bands are pretty equal in terms of performance. New Order, for the most part, do their own songs well and consistently sound more interesting. They got better stage production and have just better aura. They can't do Joy Division, which sucks, and they don't play deep cuts, which also sucks. And Barney can't sing, which is a given. But the rest of the band does pretty well, even if the bass is gutted in some of the songs. Peter Hook's band is a great Joy Division cover band, but fumbles a solid 50% of New Order's discography. But at least he provides a better alternative for the purists of either band in terms of their rock tracks. If you don't care about stage presence and just general aura, then they're pretty perfect. Either way, it's great to see them both doing well at their age, and I hope they get back together, even though that seems like an impossibility now. But I guess I'll have to name a winner for myself, so congrats, Peter Hook.
But if it wasn't for your baby